Hey guys, my name's Matty and today I want to go over with you 5 beginner Lightroom tips which I think will help streamline your workflow. If you're new here guys, welcome along. It's so great to have you here. This is our fourth or fifth video here on YouTube and it's going great. So my goal with this channel is to just continue sharing my work and to ultimately connect with more photographers. So like I said before guys, the aim of this video is to go over 5 tips for using Lightroom in a way that will help streamline your workflow and make using the program a whole lot easier and simpler. I should start off by saying that this video is directed towards the more beginner photographer just starting out on their journey, someone who's just downloaded Lightroom and who's interested in getting involved in the whole game of photography. If you are someone who's been using Lightroom for a while, you might find these tips a little bit too basic for you or something that you already know, but to be honest, there's some tips in here that I think not everyone does know about, so it would be worthwhile sticking around because you might learn something that can help you while you're editing. So guys, if we jump right into Lightroom, what we're gonna find is there's a ton of panels and a ton of information that might not make a whole lot of sense to us. And that leads us into our first tip. Tip number 1 is to clean up your workspace. Obviously, if you do want to use some of the features that I'm about to hide, that's totally cool. This is just how I go about it and kind of the method that I want to share with you today. So first, what we're gonna do guys, is you're gonna right click up on this black panel here. And what you're gonna show, or what it's gonna show is the web, print, slideshow, book, map, develop and library panels. If I'm honest with you, I really only use the library and the develop panels. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna unselect web, print, slideshow, and the rest. What that does guys, is that just leaves the 2 panels that I use all the time. I don't need to be seeing the slideshow or the book panel, so I have no use for them being up there. So by getting rid of them, we just another thing, we clear out the way and it makes things look a bit cleaner. Next, if we jump onto the right here guys, you're gonna see this histogram, this keywording, this keyboard list, some stuff that I've never actually used. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click this little arrow here and get rid of that. It'll still pop up when I hover over here, which if I do need to use it is cool, but all the time I find myself not having to see it. So let's get rid of it. Next, we're gonna do the same thing with the bottom panel. Below you can see a list of all our photos and you can scroll through them. I don't really like that and I don't usually go through my photos looking at these tiny thumbnails. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide this. It's just another little feature. We're just trying to maximize our workspace and all I wanna see is photos and my little thumbnail that shows me the catalog and that's it. Moving on guys, right down here we can see a toolbar. This toolbar is something very useful and it's something that I'd recommend you leaving into your workspace. If you are someone who wants to get rid of it and you're proper minimalist and you want to clear up everything, if you hit Command T, that'll get rid of that toolbar. Again, I would recommend keeping it in, so let's go back and hit Command T again, and just so we have these little bit of extra options to organize our photos. So overall guys, tip number 1 is to clear up your workspace. What you want to do is try and maximize the amount of space on your screen and kind of just leave what you're actually going to use. Like you don't need to have all these extra fancy features around. If you're just wanting to bring some photos in and edit them like you would, these are the only 2 panels you're going to need and I would suggest keeping it as clean as possible. Okay guys, so tip number 2 is to use smart previews. Now, smart previews is probably the most useful tip on this list and it's one of the more recent ones that I brought into my workflow and it's something I would totally recommend to any other photographer I meet. It's a really great service that Lightroom provides and it's something that I'd recommend you utilize in your work. What you're gonna do guys is you're gonna hit an image and you're gonna go Library, Previews, Build Smart Previews. So you're gonna hit Build One and hit OK. So what a smart preview does is that if you're editing off your hard drive, it allows Lightroom to gather the information from the raw file on your hard drive and save it locally in a much smaller file on your computer. But what it means is that you can edit off your computer without your hard drive plugged in. This is a really big benefit if you're on the go a lot and you edit away from home. I certainly use smart previews all the time and I find it incredibly beneficial to editing on the go. And it's something that means that if I do forget a hard drive or if I do have a file on another SSD, it means that I can continue editing even if I'm away from it. It also helps out with space and that kind of thing, but for me personally, this is how I find smart previews to be such a major benefit and a way to streamlining my workflow. I should also stress, guys, that if you do plan to export your photos, I would highly recommend exporting it after you plug your hard drive back in. I haven't actually done a test to see if exporting off a Smart Preview file has any difference to a RAW file export, but I would assume so. Okay guys, tip number 3 is to use collections. I know a ton of photographers who don't really use this really great feature in Lightroom, and I think it's a great way to organize your files from a shoot and to set out how you plan to produce these final images. If we jump back into Lightroom, guys, you can see here on the left, collections is all empty. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the plus and I'm gonna go create collection. So let's call this selects. So say I just got home from a shoot, guys, and I've just imported all my photos and I've just built the Smart Previews. What I'm gonna do now is to go through them all and make sure I can find the ones that I wanna start editing. A really efficient and effective way of doing this is by putting all the ones that I want to edit into a nice collection. If we jump back into Lightroom, a really cool feature is if we right-click select and hit set as target selection. What that's gonna do is create a plus sign next to our title name. Now, when we cycle through our images, and I hit the letter B, this will add this photo to our selects collection. So let's go through and say, I want this one, I want this one, and I want this one, for example. So now if we hit G on our keyboard to head back to our grid, and I go over to the selects, those 3 images that I produced, or that I selected, sorry, are all here in this little collection. This is a really fantastic feature if you want to organize your photos for a website, for your Instagram, for a series, for a blog, and wherever else you want to produce these photos. It's just a really great way at organizing. The 4th tip I want to go over with you today, guys, is to use a different catalog for every different shoot you do. So for those of you who don't know what I'm on about and you're new to Lightroom, what we're editing in now is a catalog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, Open Recent, and here you can see all the catalogs I used in the last few weeks and months. And you can see that they're all different. These are from different days, from different trips. And by keeping them all separate, coming back to them and finding images when I want them is a whole lot easier. So if I head to Open Recent and I head to Austria Series and I click on that, Lightroom's gonna get rid of this catalog and then it's gonna open up our new catalog, Austria Series. So here you can see all the photos from my time in Austria. It's something that I only started doing about 1.5 to 2 years ago, where I kept all my catalogs separate. I used to have one big catalog for Instagram and then one big catalog for a trip in 2018. And what it meant is that I kept losing a lot of photos in this sea of images. So by keeping them smaller catalogs and separate, coming back to them is so much easier and so much more effective. So guys, the last tip I want to share with you is to make sure that you are using preset export settings. Preset export settings help you streamline your export process. Exporting your photos and getting them out there is always the most exciting part, and by streamlining this part of the editing process, we ensure that the right file gets exported the correct way for the right platform. So guys, if we jump back into Lightroom, I'll show you what I'm talking about. What you're gonna do is you're gonna head to File, Export. And what that does is gonna open up our export function. And here you'll be able to see there's presets that I'm talking about. On the left-hand side, I've got Instagram, print, and web. So say this photo I wanted to share on Instagram. By selecting this Instagram user preset, it will export this photo to the right specifications and image sizing optimized for Instagram. To create an export preset, guys, what we're gonna do is if we jump back into Lightroom, say we have just finished our photo and we're ready to export, right? So this tab is for Instagram. So it's got resize to fit width and height, 1080, 1350. Let's say you didn't have these. So I'll give you a chance to plug these in right now. And once you've got these in, you hit the add on the left and it will pop up with this new preset. So let's call this Instagram 2.0 and hit create. That's gonna pop it right on the left for you, and that now you can use that preset. So if you do find a tutorial on YouTube which shows you how to export your photos for the particular purpose you're using, be sure to add it on the left-hand side there so it pops up into your user preset, so next time using it is a lot easier. And that's it, guys. That's just 5 tips that I can give you to help streamline your photography workflow when starting out using Lightroom. Lightroom can be quite a daunting and confronting program if you're just starting out in photography. I hope that these 5 tips offer you a bit more guidance into clearing up the workspace and to using the program more effectively to your liking. I realize for the long-term users of Lightroom, these tips may have appeared a little bit basic, but If you did find some, I'm really glad that you did. I know I use all of these tips in my workflow, and it's something that's really helped effectively streamline my work. But otherwise, guys, that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you gained some value out of these 5 tips. It would be fantastic if you followed me on Instagram or subscribe below. I'm gonna be doing more videos every week, so be sure to stick around to see some more.